What? Oh, 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 somebody's here. Oh, man. Hold on. I got to mute the music. Somebody's here. Doesn't say who it is. Oh, two people are here. Hot dog. Not wasted. Hello? Is my mic working? Give me a thumbs up if yes. If you have questions, you should be able to put them in the chat. So if you want to, just let me know that you're here. Say I'm here in the chat to make sure that the chat works. That would be great. By the way, I'm sorry it's so late. The baseball game kind of went a little long. Is the microphone working? Yes. No. Okay. Well, I'm going to get started. I wanted to go over a couple things. Specifically, I wanted to go over the 3 parts for period 7 because now I'm all concerned and worried. And I really think, I don't know why. Now you got me all flustered. I want to make sure that you guys are ready in case you are hit with a DBQ from 7 or an LEQ. So what I want to do is to go through the key concepts from period 7. There's 3 of them. So there's this little presentation I'll just share with you guys. I don't know if you can see it full screen or not. I think you can. So these are the key things I think you guys need to know for period 7, the first concept. First and foremost, this is the time of in American history where America really expands, not just population-wise, but economically, industrially. But at the same time, this is also a time in American history where you have issues specifically related to the economy where the United States government has to, and people, citizens rise up and start movements to basically make changes to the country and like social issues and economic issues. Okay, some big questions that you need to think about. First and foremost, why did the U.S. transform from a rural to an industrial society? And how did this affect the lives of women and other Americans? Okay, why did citizens and government officials call for increased intervention in the economy? What was the driving force behind that? And then how did the New Deal change the relationship between the government and the economy? This is a huge change in the relationship between the government and its interaction. Well, not just the economy, but social issues as well. Okay. Obviously, this transition from rural agriculture to industry It was pushed and led by these large corporations that gobbled up smaller companies and made themselves even larger. Okay. First and foremost, the new technologies, manufacturing techniques, the assembly line, Henry Ford. Okay. Utilized Taylorism, right? That piecework, right? The utilizing time and task and time on task and task completion quicker, right? Focused on production of consumer goods, radios, refrigerators, cars, other things. Okay. The cars was the big one because of Ford and the Model T. Now, new goods. Okay. What did these new goods do? First and foremost, the standard of living significantly increased for most Americans during this time period. Okay. There's a phrase that's utilized during the Great Depression. The phrase is piss poor. All right. Now, I know that that's not really the best language, but piss poor is basically, you didn't have a pot to pee in because that's where usually people went to. That was the indoor plumbing. Okay. You were so poor you didn't even have a pot to pee in. Now, these new goods and this shift from rural agriculture to industry changed lifestyles. Okay. One of the biggest impacts was cars. It allowed people to be more mobile. Okay. It allowed people to take vacations. It allowed people to go from one state to another fairly quickly. Okay. In a short amount of time. All right. And there you have an assembly line. I can't see because I'm not zoomed in. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. I'm trying to think what they're making. I don't know. They look like wheels, but I could be wrong. I can't zoom in because I'm sharing it with you guys. Yeah. By the way, if I'm going through this and you have any questions, stop me or ask the question. So let's continue on. Second part: U.S. transformation, rural, urban. By 1920, more Americans lived in cities than they did in the country. This is the first time in our nation's history where in American society, more people were living in cities than the country. Okay. Now, what did this mean? This allowed greater opportunities for women. Okay. Why? Because women could now work in factories. Why could they do that? Because there was a need for workers. Okay. Now there's a positive and a negative to this. The positive, the women are working. They're not, in the home. They're not they're not homemakers. They're actually laborers. Okay. Now there's a downside to this because of women working in factories. It exposed them to, let's just say, not the greatest working conditions, but more importantly, crowded working conditions. Do not be surprised if you see this on the test tomorrow. Women were big in making textiles, right? Fabric, clothing, okay, things like that. The shirtwaist factory and the shirtwaist fire. Do not be shocked if you see that on the test tomorrow, because that's usually one that they have on there in a multiple choice form. I don't think you'll see it in an essay or a short answer question, but for sure, you probably will see it in a multiple choice. Okay. Migrants, international migrants, these immigrants moved to the cities. There was a need for workers. Okay. When there's a need for workers and there's not enough in country, okay, this is when America tends to open up its borders, right? Open up the doors and allow immigration, because you have to fill those jobs, right? You have to. There's a need there, and those immigrants, they fill that need. Okay. Now the internal migrants, obviously, one of the biggest movements during this time period in American history is African Americans moving from the South to the North. Okay, and farmers moving from rural America into the cities because of the jobs. Okay. Cool. Hold on. I don't know. Is that where you probably can't see it? It's probably cut off. Okay. I'm going to go back. Yeah, there is a picture of the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. Sorry, Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. Now, as you can see, it's a pretty large building. But more importantly, if you look close enough, you really don't see fire escapes or anything to really aid in fire safety. So obviously did not end well. So let me fast forward. Okay. Did I just go backward? Okay. No, we're moving forward. Okay. Next part C, economic downturns. What does this do? This is the push where the economy starts to make that up and down roller coaster ride. Okay. Kind of talked about it a little bit. I think we talked about that in 6, the unregulated banking system leading to this spikes and ups and downs in the economy because of the unregulated monetary system. During period 7, okay, you had these economic downturns, but during this time period, you see America and specifically the government starting to become more involved in regulating this or these downturns or this economy in hopes of creating what would become a stronger financial system. Okay. First thing, the FDIC, the Federal Depositors Insurance Corporation. This is the baby of the New Deal and FDR. This was created in an effort to prevent these bank runs and these unstable banks from robbing people of their life savings. Okay. People would hear rumors that banks are running out of money. You better go get your money now. And they would create these runs on banks, and they literally would take everything out of the bank, and the bank would have nothing left when people would come to get their money out because they only had so much money in there. The rest they were loaning out in loans to other borrowers of that banking institution. They only have so much cash on hand at any given time. If everybody in a bank went to the bank on the same day and said, "Give me all my money right now," okay, obviously that would cause some issues. Okay, this FDIC gave people that reassurance that if something happens to your bank, it folds or becomes bankrupt, your money is going to be insured up to, I believe it's $250,000. The federal government insures it for. So you should sleep easy if you have $250,000 in the bank, because it's insured by the government. If you have 250,000 in one, you're going to be out that $1. But okay. Now, what did this do? This basically gave people the reassurance, and it was about confidence. People had confidence in the financial institutions, right? If they have confidence, they're not going to be making runs on the bank. Okay. Oh, there it is, the FDIC brand. Okay. Now, moving on, part 2. This is the progressive era, right? Early 20th century. The progressives are calling for, they're basically starting to fight back against political corruption. They're starting to fight back against this economic stability that we just talked about. And more importantly, they're starting to rise up and bring awareness to the social concerns and the social issues that America is facing at this time, and pushing government to do something about it. Okay. Progressive era journalists, what did they attack? First of all, the political corruption, right? The shame of the cities. They exposed corruption between the municipal governments and businesses. You had city governments, municipal governments making these shady deals with these contractors to build things, and they're built shoddy, but they get paid for building it well, and it was just not good. Social injustice. That was Jacob Riis and How the Other Half Lives. It showed the economic inequality that was occurring in America at this time, this disparity and discrepancy between the poor and the wealthy. Okay. Progressive era reformers, middle class and urban, they basically focused on the social changes in city and immigration populations, right? The most notable, obviously, is going to be Jane Addams and her creation of the Hull House. Okay. So this was an opportunity for people. it was to fight homelessness and the poor living conditions in the cities. Okay. Yeah, there's an example of a little walkway. All right. Part two. B, progressives on the national level. Here's what they wanted to do. They wanted to regulate the economy. How do you do that? Obviously, we're going to talk about the Clayton Antitrust Act. This was the time where these corporations they were in it for the money. Okay, they were making money. Not all of them. Okay, some of them were philanthropists, and we talked about that when we talked about Carnegie. He believed in wealth, but he also believed in using that wealth to help society. Okay, but these monopolies, Carnegie, Rockefeller, they really cornered every aspect of their company's livelihood and made even more money because of it, because they owned every aspect of it, so they could charge whatever they wanted. Okay. Now, this Clayton Antitrust Act, what it did was it strengthened the Sherman Antitrust Act, and more importantly, it exempted labor unions from legal action. So labor unions, they could organize, they could negotiate fair wages and safe working conditions, and not be fearful of being arrested for breaking the law. Okay. The Federal Reserve Bank, obviously, this controlled the supply of money. If you control the supply of money, you can actually regulate the value of it, right? If you have too much money in circulation, the value of it goes down, prices go up. It's called inflation. We talked about that in class. Okay. These progressive, they wanted to expand government, democracy. They had the 17th Amendment. This was the amendment that actually led to the direct election of senators. Prior to this, senators were actually selected by state legislatures. This would change that entire system and put it in the hands of the state constituents, the state people, and not the state legislators. So the state legislators couldn't reward, friends or campaign, financiers or donators. Excuse me. Okay. Next thing they wanted to do is they wanted to generate moral reform, right? They wanted to push for the 18th Amendment. Obviously, this was prohibition, right? Because alcohol was bad, right? They wanted to reform families. Alcohol was destroying families. They believed that to the core. They said, we need to have an 18th Amendment. We need to outlaw alcohol and bring back the family structure and strengthen the family structure. Okay. Other amendments during this era, obviously the 16th Amendment, that was the amendment where the federal government actually issued and can issue an income tax. They can tax a person's income. Okay. The 19th, obviously in 1920, is going to give us women's suffrage. Women will then have the right to vote, which changes the political landscape. This is not a new reform movement. If you remember right, this happened earlier in the time period, but it didn't actually end up or result in an amendment. But it ended up in several conventions where women got together and organized and started to politically motivate legislators to seriously consider this as an option. Okay. How am I doing? Okay, we're still good, right? All right. We have 5 people now. All right. We're killing it. Can I change this? No, I can't. Hold on. I'm just trying to see if you guys can see the whole screen. I'll just keep going. I'm hoping you can see the whole screen. Okay. Next, conservationists, preservationists. Obviously, this is the movement. Well, the green movement, I guess, the first green movement is a push for the creation and of national parks, the preservation of federal land. Okay. Obviously, this is also a push for the government to regulate or try to limit the overuse of natural resources here in the United States. Okay. Obviously, these conservationists, they wanted to promote the proper use of the natural resources of the United States. They didn't want to overcut timber. They didn't want to basically cut every tree down to make farm fields. Whoa, hold on a second. I got to turn the light on. Stupid movement. Ocean. All right. Okay, moving on. All right. Now, the progressives weren't perfect. There were things that divided them. So, first of which was segregation. Okay. Now, you had W.E.B. Du Bois and the Niagara Movement, which was the NAACP. Okay. They sought to be done with segregation. Segregation is evil. We need to get rid of it. We know this, right? Okay. Now, Booker T. Washington, he wanted economic equality first. He said, in order to get an end to segregation, we have to, and when he was saying we African Americans must strive for economic equality first. If we have economic equality first, we will then have the resources to make a much better push towards the end of segregation. Okay. Now, what does this do? This expands popular participation in government. Obviously, the progressives, some of them argued that for people to make decisions, specifically, we're talking about legislators and no, I don't want to say shareholders, but company boards or company owners or these leaders. That's the term I'll use. Leaders making decisions. Obviously, you want to have better political participation, because if you have better political participation, you can make more legitimate pushes for change, more legitimate pushes for social change, okay, and development. All right. Obviously, the progressives disagreed on immigration. Obviously, it was about restriction. Immigration restriction wouldn't occur or take place until the 20s. Hold on. Oh, I cut it off. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna. Yeah, let me see if I can just edit this. Nope, I can't. Okay. So this is something that I don't want to say it split the progressives, but obviously it did. All right. There was no solid policy from the progressives regarding immigration. Okay. All right. Moving on to number 3. Obviously, the 30s. Okay. This is a huge time in America. Obviously, the crash of 29 changed everything. It was the time of the Great Depression in the United States, mass unemployment. You had the United States basically turning into a limited welfare state. So what does the government have to do? It's going to have to make changes. It's going to have to repurpose itself. Right? It's going to have to now not be just a hands-off kind of government. It's going to have to be, more of a socialized state where it's going to have to intervene. It's going to have to regulate. It's going to have to aid and assist its citizens because, let's just face it, 25% of people who wanted jobs couldn't find a job. Okay. You had families struggling to feed their kids. You had children and families starving to death. Okay, so in walks FDR, right? His New Deal, right? He's going to try to end the Great Depression. How's he going to do that? 1, right? Relief. Woo! Provide relief to the poor. Okay, how are you going to do that? You're going to provide Social Security. Okay, now this is a very interesting system. Okay, it provides income for elderly Americans. Elderly Americans no longer have to work. That will open up jobs for other people. A, it opens up jobs for other people. B, it supports the elderly. It's a win-win. Job creator, supporting the elders. It's a good thing, right? Okay. Now the AAA. Okay. The Agricultural Adjustment Act, right? It paid farmers to not overproduce goods. You heard me right. It paid farmers to not grow stuff. It subsidized farmers. Okay. It paid farmers to leave fields empty. They were called set-aside fields. Okay. Now, the second step, stimulate recovery. How do you do that? Provide jobs to the unemployed because you make jobs. You create the Civilian Conservation Corps. Okay. You create the Public Works Administration. Okay. The Civilian Conservation Corps, I'm not kidding you, they dug ditches, they planted trees. It was just something to get them working for two reasons. One, if they're working, they can feed themselves, maybe feed their families. And second, they can pay taxes because the government can collect income taxes, right? So they're making money, but the government is also making money too. Okay. Now the Public Works Administration, this was a big thing for job creation because it worked on public work projects, right? Roads, bridges. Okay. This was big, right? It improved the infrastructure in the United States, which, well, let's just face it, at the time was sorely needed. Okay. Because it had been neglected. All right. Now, also, FDR embraced it's supposed to be Keynesian deficit spending. Okay. We talked about this Keynesian deficit spending. This is Keynesian deficit spending that also Ronald Reagan used, only Ronald Reagan did it for to increase military, right? To revamp the military. This, FDR used it as a method to basically prime the pump, get the economy flowing again, get the people back to work so they can buy things. If they're buying things, companies will create things and make things, okay? Reforming the American economy. How is the government going to do that? Obviously, the SEC, okay? The Securities and Exchange Commission, they regulated the stock market. Why was this important? Because the crash of the stock market and borrowing on margin and buying on margin ended up killing the stock market and thus killing the American economy and leading to the Great Depression, okay? It also prevented fraud. Well, it tries to prevent fraud. It works at preventing fraud. Okay. You just got to be very aware. Okay. And then, of course, you have the FDIC, which we already talked about, the Federal Depositors Insurance Corporation. Okay. Now, any one of these things that I just mentioned could be on your test tomorrow and a multiple choice question. Okay. Let's move on there. Oh, Social Security card. That is not me. That's John Doe. It's fake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. All right. You also have the USA Work Program. Yeah, we poke along. Works Progress Administration. Okay. Moving on. All right. Movements that push for more reforms also included unions, right? Unions organized workers. Workers could then organize. They could negotiate for better wages, safer working conditions. All right. Obviously, you had populists, you had radicals. Examples, Huey Long, every man a king. This was the man who proposed that we're going to kind of rebalance the wealth in America. We're going to give $5,000 to citizens, and where are we going to do that, or how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by getting it or taking it from the wealthy and redistributing it to the not wealthy, right? Yeah, this is a redistribution of wealth. This is why some people don't agree with the tax system we have. The government shouldn't use the tax system to redistribute wealth. That's what conservatives believe. Okay. Father Charles Coughlin, he said that the government should nationalize banks. All right, because if the government nationalizes banks, they can oversee every aspect of the bank. Now, the problem with this is if you do that, that kind of limits the whole capitalist society that we have, right, in the free market. Because believe it or not, banks have shareholders and stockholders, and they're in it to make money. That's why they invest in the financial institution in the first place. Okay. Now, the New Deal was not a popular thing for everybody. There were people in Congress and on the Supreme Court that were hoping that people would bring legal challenges to the court, and so the court could strike them down and basically put or take away some power from FDR and the executive branch. Okay. Congress Robert Taft, who was William Howard's son, and other conservatives fought tooth and nail to do everything that they could to stop the aspects of the New Deal. Okay. They viewed it as socialist, right? This is not an uncommon thing. We talk about connecting history, connecting periods. This is still occurring today. You have conservatives that fight tooth and nail when the government gets involved in persons' everyday lives, right? When they do too much, the government does, and they are doing or creating a welfare state, as some would call it. This is still today when you have like the Affordable Care Act. All right. This was the federal program that is supposed to subsidize individuals and issue them federalized or nationalized health care if they don't have their own, which was intended and did bring the cost of health care down for those individuals. Okay. This would be a way you could connect the New Deal programs being fought if you have to, all right, in an essay or a DBQ. I don't think you will, but if you did, you could connect this fighting of the New Deal as socialist to people during the 20 teens fighting the Affordable Care Act. Okay. The Supreme Court, they actually overturned the National Recovery Act with Schechter Poultry versus the United States. This basically stated that the federal government didn't have the right to interfere in a company's, how do I put this, oversight into their workers, their workplace, and specifically their salaries. Okay. I don't know if you can see this. This is U.S. versus Butler. I don't think you can. Hold on. Let me see if I can. Hold on. I don't know if you can still see. Did I? Oh, hold on. Something happened. Did people in PWA need the credentials to work, or did they just put flyers up and pick people off the streets? That is a great question. I think that's Nate. Hold on. Well, hopefully you can hear me. That's a great question, Nate. So the PWA, for the most part, they literally would go to these. Well, they'd have like a job. I don't even want to call it a job fair. They would basically have people going into these cities and trying to find people who were qualified to do certain jobs. So in essence, yes, they would look for people that were credentialed. They would look for people that were qualified. But as far as like them having a resume or like degrees or anything, I don't think they checked into that. I think it was more along the lines of, did they have experience? Would they be able to do said job? Okay. I don't think I don't think that was the background checks were that thorough, if you know what I mean. I think they were just trying to get people back and working. And when you said PWA, are you talking the WPA? I'll wait for you to respond. Are you still there, Nate? Or did you leave me? Same thing, whatever. No. You can't. Okay. Here's the thing. The PWA is not the WPA. All right. Can you see me? Understand me right now. The WPA is the Works Progress Administration. The PWA is the Public Works Administration. Okay. Now, the Public Works Administration is different. The Public Works Administration was created by the NIR, the National Industrial Recovery Act. Okay. The purpose of the purpose of the PWA basically was focused on schools, dams, bridges, hospitals. That was the public works. The WPA was more. It was, oh man. So it was more along the lines of. I mean, I shouldn't say they did the same things, but you also had the WPA did things, and I'm not making this up. This is a true story. You can check me. They did things like artwork. So, like they got paid to do, like create documentaries. They paid musicians to write songs. I want to say, what was his name? Woody Guthrie, I think, was paid through the WPA. They had they built playgrounds. They created sculptures. It was a broader. The WPA was a broader employment scope. Like it wasn't. It did public buildings. It did bridges. It did dams. But it also did, like I said, the parks, the playgrounds, the swimming pools, sculptures, artwork, music, even books and poetry was subsidized through the WPA. So that's, I think, the major difference that you need to understand between the WPA and the PWA. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Same thing, whatever. I did that. Sorry, this last one. Okay, let me see if I can pull this thing back up. I don't know what happened to it. Okay, yep, here. Okay, let me see if I can go back to this. All right. So let's talk about the legacy of the New Deal. What does this mean for America moving forward? Here's a newsflash. It did not completely end the Great Depression. So if you have an essay about the New Deal, don't say that it ended the Great Depression, because if you do, it's not entirely accurate. Okay. Obviously, what it did, the major thing it did was it allowed and changed the way government was utilized to make change. Okay. New reforms, new agencies that still exist today: Social Security, FHA, FDIC. Okay. Those are what I like to call the big three. Okay. So if you are talking about the legacy of the New Deal, obviously you need to talk about Social Security. You need to talk about the Federal Housing Administration. And you need to talk about the FDIC. Okay. Those are things that impact Americans today, and probably, well, knock on some wood somewhere, hopefully will be helping us out in the near future as well. Okay. It changed voting patterns. Okay. You may hear of historians talking about the party switch. Okay. Now, it's not like people woke up one day and they said, "Oh, I'm going to vote for this party now because this is the party that I'm down with this party." Okay. That's not how it worked. It was obviously a more subtle shift from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party was doing more to help these people. Okay. Specifically, the first wave of the shift were African Americans. Okay. Obviously, because they benefited a lot from the Democratic policies. Okay. Reforms. Okay. Now, other ethnic groups also started to identify with these Democrats. Okay. This is what leads to this party shift. Okay. You have these groups that were once diehard Republicans now switching over and now voting with Democrats because of the social programs and policies implemented by the Democrats during this time. Okay. All right. Working class communities, labor unions did as well because of the Wagner Act. Okay. The Wagner Act allowed these unions, hey, the government, these people, the people that are in charge, these Democrats, they got our back, right? They're our ride or die. Okay. So these groups, so minorities, African Americans, and labor unions, you see these groups now voting Democrat, which they never would have done prior to the New Deal. All right, this New Deal and the New Deal programs basically created this shift in the voting pattern. Not a party switch, a voting pattern switch. Okay. All right. Some test tips to think about for concept 1 for period 7. For the multiple choice and short answer, identify and explain opportunities for women, African Americans, and immigrants. Okay, specifically in cities. Successes, failures, and critiques of. It's supposed to be critiques. My bad, not critics. Well, you could identify critics of the New Deal, but you should be able to critique the New Deal. You should be able to know why or in what aspect it wasn't successful. Okay, things that it did do well, things that it didn't do well. Okay, and specifically the government reforms during this time period, the Great Depression. All right, obviously, when we're talking about government reforms, you can't talk about government reforms and not talk about the New Deal. Okay. Now, essay questions for this concept. Okay. Compare and contrast government response during the Great Depression and specifically other time periods. Remember, because we're talking about tying time periods together. So this opportunity, this government response during the Great Depression, did it mirror any other time in American history where the government starts to take a more active role in reforms or assistance even? Okay. Causes and effects of the migrations, obviously internal and international. If we're talking about internal, specifically, we're talking about farmers moving to the cities, and we're talking about African Americans moving from the south to the north. Okay, specifically in the cities of the north where the industries were, where they could get jobs. Okay, you could also bring in the international. You can talk about the influx of during this time, obviously, Eastern Europe, Eastern Europe, Germany, Southeast Europe. Okay. Those migrations or immigrations to America. All right. And I think that's it for this one. Do you have any other questions before I move? Whoa, holy. Whoa. Mr. Smith, come back. What happened? What's going on? Okay. Does not have. Can you hear me? Can you see me now? I don't know what's going on. Talk to me. Oh, he's back. Oh, did I go somewhere? I mean, what happened? My camera went out. Could you see the? Oh my God. Everything's fixed. Okay, wait. So I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna try something and see if I'm okay. Can you still see me? Hello out there in TV land. Okay, everything's fine. Okay. All right. Well, all right. So do you have any questions before I go to the second concept for period 7? Yeah, you have a question, or yes, you can see me. Hello. I need a drink while we're taking a break. Yep, gone forever. Nope. Okay. Well, if you guys have no questions, I'm going to go to the concept 2 for 7. Let me see. Hold on. Whoa, big screen. Okay. Where's my 7-2? Okay, let's run through 7-2 here. Well, that didn't work. Huh. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whoa. Whoa. What's going on? Hold on. It's not working. Okay. I think I got it. I think I'm fixed. Oh my God. What's going on right now? I come back and there's like 80 comments. Okay. Well, I'm going to try. Okay. I think I got it fixed now. I'm going to try sharing this again. Hold on. I wonder if I can do it here. Oh, maybe this will work. Hold on. Try this again. One last time. Okay. I think we're going to be good. All right. Well, hopefully you can see me. Okay. Let's try this again. All right. Whoa. All right. Let's try this again. Okay. So concept 2 for period 7. Obviously, this is about innovations, communication, technology. Oh, man. Come on. Okay. Innovations in communications, technology, and how did it change American culture? Okay. Some questions to think about. 1, how did technology transform the standard of living in the United States? Well, you could guess. Okay. Obviously, things changed. Okay. What factors led to the immigration restrictions during the 1920s? Why were people being mean? Because mean people suck. But why were people limiting the amount of immigrants coming to America? And then lastly, what caused internal migration to increase drastically in the United States during the first half of the 20th century? So basically from 1900 to, after the World War II. Why did this internal migration increase? Okay. All right. First off, popular culture. All right. It grew. Why did it grow? Because mass media helped to spread culture and awareness of regional cultures. It basically opened people's eyes that there were other cultures in America. Okay. What did this? Radio did this. Okay. This was a large source of entertainment. The War of the Worlds in 1938 scared the living bejesus out of people. It was a radio program where it was Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. It's about an alien invasion, and the radio program acts like it's a real alien invasion, and nobody knew that it was an entertainment piece. And literally, people went and committed suicide because they didn't know any better, right? They were listening to the radio, and that's where people got their information from. That's where people got their news from. They literally thought it was a broadcast of an alien invasion, and people were like, the country was being invaded. Okay. Now, there were positive things for the entertainment. Obviously, the fireside chats. Okay. The fireside chats allowed FDR to calm the American people. All right. With the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Okay. I think I can skip Father Coughlin. Let's move on to cinema. The Nickelodeons. You might have a question on the Nickelodeons. Okay, yeah, we can talk about it. Plain and simple, like the Nickelodeons. It's not the TV station that you have on cable nowadays, like Nick Jr. and all that. That's not what they're talking about. when they talk about Nickelodeons, it literally was these weekend shows where you could watch for a nickel. It was literally people's entertainments on the weekend, right? So it was not uncommon for families to take advantage of this, because it was cheap entertainment, right? For a nickel, you could go watch a show. Yeah. So anyway, moving on. I don't think they'll be on the test, but you never know. If it is, now you know what they are. All right. Like I said, it was entertainment, and this was a way for people to get away from the tragedy that was the Great Depression. So, The Jazz Singer, 1927. This was the first movie that actually had sound. Right? People were amazed, right? Because it was a movie picture that had sound. Okay. These regional cultures, obviously Yiddish theater. This basically showed people in other parts of America experiences of American Jews or Jews living in America. Okay. It later would influence English-speaking theaters in America. All right. Edward Hopper. He basically made aware. Well, he spread awareness of the big cities being not empty, but people not having a sense of belonging in the big city because of the expansiveness of the city. People would feel out of place because there were so many people, but they felt that they didn't belong because, who do you identify with? Who's your friend? How many, I mean, obviously you can have many friends, but if you don't know anybody, you can't have a friend. Okay. There's a jazz singer. Okay. Moving on. The Harlem Renaissance. Okay. This is a celebration of African-American culture, writing, music, art. Some prominent figures: Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston. Okay. Part C, restrictions and freedom of speech during World War I. This is where the government starts to limit people and what they're saying during wartime. Okay. Obviously, they passed the Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918 to prevent people from, let's just say it, talking out about or against American involvement in World War I. Basically, you couldn't criticize the government during wartime. Okay. You couldn't speak out against the war. All right. This was upheld in a Supreme Court known as Schenck versus the United States. In Schenck versus the United States, Schenck was a man who was standing outside of a recruitment office, and he was handing out anti-war leaflets. The Supreme Court at the time felt and ruled that Schenck was participating in a seditious act or acts against the government or acts that would promote people to rise up and revolt against the government. Okay. Obviously, you have the Red Scare. This is basically the first Red Scare. You have the fear of communism, the fear of anarchism. This is not uncommon, and this is one of the reasons why the Supreme Court ruled in Schenck the way it did, right? Because of this Red Scare, because there was that uprising and revolt in Russia, the Revolution of October. Okay. Now, what is the impact? Obviously, you have a tax on unions, you have a tax on immigrants, because these people were aspects of what Americans believed to be communist, because they believed in obviously unions are that's a socialist thing. Workers' rights is that is the primary backbone of communism. Okay. Governor Calvin Coolidge stopped the Boston police strike in 1919. The night is beautiful, so the faces of my people. The stars are beautiful, so the eyes of my people. Beautiful also is the sun. Beautiful also are the souls of my people. This would be Langston Hughes. So, there's Zora Neale Hurston. I knew I had pictures of them. I don't know why I don't know why they come in at the end. Crazy stuff going on right now. My thing's all out of whack. I'm gonna check and see. Nope, we are not good. Fixed. Hooray. Hello, I'm so cooked. Who's Fire Rider 9164? Keep a pushing. Amen to that, brother. I don't even know how to do that, but that. Okay. For sure. That keep on a pushing. As far as you being cooked, I don't know who Fire Rider is. Fire Rider, you're not cooked. I mean, the only way you'd be cooked is if you slept for the last year in here and you didn't do any of the readings in AMSCO. Most of the stuff that you're going to see on the test tomorrow is going to be related to stuff we covered in class or stuff in AMSCO in the book. So keep on a pushing, if you will. I go back to this here. So let's move on. There's my boy Calvin. Okay. Part D, controversies and debates in the 20s. Obviously, the number one is gender roles. Okay. Newsflash, there were these hip chicks that were doing stuff that ladies shouldn't do. You know what I'm talking about. Wearing short dresses, showing their knees. Yeah. Cutting their hair short. Crazy. They were smoking cigarettes. They were drinking alcohol. Holy, look out. Okay. Those are things that, obviously women didn't do until the flappers. Okay. Margaret Sanger advocated birth control. Okay. This is a huge change in the roles of gender because at this time or prior to the 20s, women were supposed to, get married, have babies, raise babies. That's what women were supposed to do. Okay. This is the first time. Well, it's not the first time, but this is one of the first public movements of the advocacy of birth control in America. Modernism. This is the 1920 census shows that Americans living in the cities living in the cities than in the rural area for the first time ever. Okay. Workers lost their autonomy. Why did they do that? Or how did they do that? Because of the creation of the assembly line. They basically felt that their jobs were not as important now because, it's not a craftsmanship thing. It's a get it done thing. So you have science and religion. Obviously, the Scopes trial, if you're thinking about science and religion, this was the liberal interpretation of the Bible versus evolution. A teacher was not convicted, but arrested for teaching evolution in schools. How dare you teach evolution in schools? Because you didn't do that because that went against the Bible. Okay. Race. Obviously, the Red Summer of 1919, you had the race riots of northern Chicago. Whoa. Okay. Immigration. The rise of nativism in the 1920s. If you're not American, you shouldn't be here. A big, I don't want to say revival because they weren't really dead, but a resurgence of the KKK. They were more public. They were more brazen. If you lived in the South, it was not uncommon for a member of your family or several members of your family to be a member of the KKK. Obviously, this is one of the early films in Hollywood history is a film that promoted the KKK, and it was created and produced by the KKK. So you also had the Sacco and Vanzetti trial. Yeah, there they are, Sacco and Vanzetti. That's the trial for the spies. They were convicted of being spies. Okay. Economic pressures. Okay. Obviously, European immigration reached the zenith right up to World War I. Obviously, if there's a world war going on in Europe, people are going to want to get out of there. Okay. This results in that nativism of the early 20s. Okay. They start to restrict immigration. They start to limit immigration into America. 1921, you have restricted immigration to just 3% of a country's population in the U.S., according to the 1910 census. So basically, what the government did is they put limits on the number of people that could actually come into the country. I don't know how you stand on this. I don't know where you stand on this. Obviously, we are a country of immigrants, and this was a major push in the time period where you had people literally coming off the boat. They were being grabbed by people who were native of their own countries, and they would basically set them up with jobs. They would register them to vote, and they'd say, "This is who you're voting for when you vote." It was pretty. It turned into a very finely tuned political machine. 1924, restriction got even tighter to 2% of the country's population. And this time they used the 1890 census instead, which obviously was going to be much lower than the 1910 census, which meant even less people could come into the country. Okay. Now, there was an exclusion, and that was immigrants from Asia. Okay. Now, this targeted new immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe. Okay. Okay, moving on. Oh, shoot. Can you see that? All right, Part B. Reasons for the internal migration. World War I, World War II, economic opportunities in the cities for war production and labor was needed. Okay. 1930s, the Great Depression. Okies fled the Dust Bowl to California. This was Grapes of Wrath. This is a famous book. Steinbeck. There was a movie on it even. Like I said, if you've seen the movie or if you read the book and you don't cry at the end when he gets caught trying to sneak out and not saying goodbye to his mother, you have no soul. Because I mean, I'm an old brash man and I still see it and I just can't help it. But it showed the sacrifices that individuals made during the Great Depression and specifically the Dust Bowl to survive, right? Living on, I hate to say this, large soup, and flour. So the Great Migration during and after World War I, obviously, African Americans were moving from the South to the North and to the West. So why did they do that? Obviously, they're getting out of the South for good reason, right? They didn't have the freedoms there that they could have in the North or the South, or not the South, but the West. One of the reasons, segregation. You had Plessy v. Ferguson. This allowed segregation and said segregation was legal as long as the facilities that were separate but equal. What we would find out later on in American history with Brown v. Board was that the facilities were not equal. They were, in fact, absolutely separate, but they were not equal. Okay. You had racial violence in the South. You had the KKK. You had lynchings. This was not uncommon. Okay. People seriously feared for their lives. You not dare be out in a non-African American neighborhood, if it's dark. Because the KKK was so brazen at the time, they literally would come to your front yard if you were considered a troublemaker. Okay. And obviously there was limited opportunities in the South because of sharecropping. Okay. Now, does that mean when they moved, everything was better? No, they still experienced discrimination. It just wasn't as severe as it was in the South. Okay. All right, moving on. Mexicans came to the United States for economic opportunities. Obviously, Mexicans coming to America, the policies were not really set for Mexican immigrants. So what happened was a lot of the policies that they faced, because they were immigrants, but they were Mexican, It really didn't fit the mold. Okay. 500,000 of them were deported during the Great Depression because there wasn't work here for Americans, let alone 500,000 Mexicans that crossed the border. Okay. The Bracero program, obviously, this is a change in American policy where the American government is now promoting the influx of Mexican migrants immigrants to fill the need for workers during World War II when America was drafting its young men to fight. They were using Mexican immigrants as a labor force. Okay, a lot of them worked as farmers. All right, some test tips for you for concept 2. Obviously, for the multiple choice, the short answer: the changes in technology of the 20s, causes of cultural and political conflict, Harlem Renaissance, the Red Scare, specifically the impacts of the Red Scare. How did the Red Scare affect or impact the United States? Obviously, it led to its own government policies, the Alien and Sedition Acts, big prominent factors of the Red Scare, the Immigration Acts, and of course the Great Migration, reasons for and the impacts of it. Now, essay questions or long essay or DBQ possible questions. Migration opportunities as part of a larger essay on World War I and or World War II. Okay, and comparing 1920s to another decade. Obviously, if we're going to compare the 1920s to another decade, you probably would want to compare it to the 50s. Okay, because it's relatively similar with the economic boom. Okay, they both standards of living were higher. People had more money. They had more freedom because they had more money. The only difference is obviously the 50s did not end in an economic collapse. But you could compare the 1920s and the boom of the 20s to the boom of the 50s. Okay. Another one, the cultural conflicts of the 1920s. Obviously, take your pick. Okay. If there's going to be something about cultural conflict, it's going to be something I'm willing to bet the internal migration of African Americans out of the South because of racial violence and the KKK and lynchings. I'm guessing, but if there's going to be an essay question, it's going to be related to something like that. Okay. So any questions on concept 2? Could you make hold on here. Could you make a connection to segregation and Plessy v. Ferguson to Animal Farm by George Orwell? Wow. That's a good question. Oh man. Here's what I would say to that. I would say you could. I would say that you shouldn't, unless they give it as a piece of evidence. I mean, if they talk about civil rights, let's say you're doing a DBQ and they give you a prompt regarding the evolution of civil rights in America, and they talk about segregation, and they talk about Plessy v. Ferguson, and they talk about Brown v. Board. You could, in a DBQ, you could reference Animal Farm by George Orwell, and you could tie it to that external information outside of the sources that they provide you. And I would, as a former reader, if I'm reading that, I would give you credit for that. But there's no guarantee that whoever reads your response would. I would, because I think that would be a very good connection. I mean, it would. Yeah, I would give you the point for that. Because I think, well, first of all, I think thinking outside the box like that and actually connecting a piece of literature to it, I think that's phenomenal. I mean, that to show that you can connect your external knowledge to the stuff that you've learned about U.S. history, I think that would be worth the point. But I can't guarantee that. I don't know who's going to read your exam. So I can't, like I said, I can't guarantee that. But I think that would be a good connection. I would grant you the point for that. So, any other questions? No, we're good. How about you, Fire Rider? Are you still cooked? Are you breathing okay? You're not hyperventilating? No. Wow. Only Nate wants to talk to me. I'm so sad. Okay. Are you still there? Okay. Well, I want to go through this last one, this concept 3 for period 7. Okay. And that's where I was basically going to cut it off unless you had more questions or if you had something that you need clarification on. So let me stop sharing this one and let me see if I can open up that other one. I'm hoping you can still see me because, I mean, my camera still says it's on, so. Okay, come on here. Oh, Jesus. Oh, sorry, I just got an email. I'm sorry that you can't text the chat. You're missing out. It's a good time, Bianca. Okay, I'm having an issue sharing this. What in the world? Okay, it's not letting me. Oh, here we go. Please work, please work, please work. All right, well, let me do this. How do I do this? Hopefully you guys can see this. All right, so I'm going to run down concept 3 of period 7, and then if you have any other questions about anything else, let me know, and then we can talk about it. So concept 3 is going to talk about the American involvement in global conflicts, and specifically how that involvement led to the United States becoming a global power. Okay, obviously, this leads to debates within the country of what is America's role in the world. Well, what we find out in this concept, and specifically with period 7, or this part of period 7, is that this is still under debate or up for debate. So obviously some questions you need to think about. One, what were the arguments for and against U.S. expansion overseas in the late 19th and early 20th centuries? Obviously, we're talking about like the Philippines. Okay. So if you're going to see questions like that, it's going to be about expansion. Okay. Second, how did World War I and World War II challenge our tradition of neutrality? Because usually, because of George Washington, we basically took it. Okay. We usually took a step back and we stayed out of affairs that were not ours, and we kept our nose out of it. Okay. What ways did America change its views, and in what ways did it keep the same or stay the same? What impacts did World War II have on the home front as well as the U.S. position in the world? Do not be shocked if one of these questions is an SAQ question. Okay, I'm willing to bet if it's not, it's one of these I think is going to be an essay question. Okay, I think it's going to be a short answer question or a long essay question, or somehow involved in in the DBQ. Okay, but that's my personal opinion. I like I said, I don't know. So, all right. So let's start part one. Obviously, American ambitions abroad, territorial ambitions, led to the expansion of America. To the delight of some, to the anguish of others. Obviously, imperialists wanted to have or increase economic opportunities. American companies were looking for foreign markets because if you have more markets to sell your goods, you're going to make more money. Specifically, one of the big companies was Dole. You know, the pineapples? Yeah, they had plantations in Hawaii. Okay. Racial theories. Obviously, America was going to civilize non-white nations. Okay, this is the white man's burden, 1899. We talked about this in class. Remember, I showed you the images and the imagery that was used to promote this idea of the uncivilized people that we were going to civilize. Okay, the frontier was closed. All right, what does this mean? Obviously, the western frontier that was so expansive at one time was now closed. There weren't any opportunities for Americans out west, specifically companies and corporations. So you have to look elsewhere to fill that gap and that void. So where do you look? You look abroad. You look in other territories. Okay. There's one of the images. I mean, that's not horrible, but I don't know if you guys can see that very well. And I can't zoom in. So, yeah, this is Frederick Jackson Turner. All right. Moving on, part B, arguments used by anti-imperialists against overseas acquisitions. Obviously, self-determination. It's not our job to dictate what people deserve. It's the people themselves to decide what they want. It's called consent of the governed, right? People have a government because they choose to have a government, and it's left up to the people, okay? Now, obviously, we've had a tradition of isolationism. This was started in George Washington's farewell address. I talked about that, okay? We did not stick our nose in other people's business. That was the American way, okay? Part C, the Spanish-American War, 1898, okay? America defeated Spain in 4 months. Here's a shocker. Spain was supposed to be a global power at that time in 1898, okay? We defeated them in 4 months, okay? Now, why did we get involved in the Spanish-American War? Well, we talked about this. The USS Maine was sunk, right? Now, whether it was sunk or there was a boiler explosion, it didn't matter because journalists used their papers and media outlets to play this off as the Maine was attacked. This was a sudden and deliberate attack against America by Spain, and we need to respond in kind. And remember the Maine. Okay, remember the Maine. Fight for the Maine. Okay, take out those dirty Spaniards. Okay, and then also you had the DeLome letter. I don't think you'll see the DeLome letter on your test though. I think that was on last year. Obviously, the territories gained: Cuba, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Okay, what were some of the effects of the Spanish-American War? Obviously, our presence in the Caribbean and Latin America increased significantly as a result of the Roosevelt corollary, right? Because this is our hemisphere. We need to defend it, okay? It led to a nationalist movement in the Philippines by Emilio Aguinaldo. I don't think you'll have to remember his name, but just understand that because we acquired the Philippines didn't mean that the Filipinos were going to go quietly. It was their island. They kind of liked it. They kind of wanted to keep it. Okay. I don't have it's not linked. You can't get the link. I had this link on, there's a video. It's not linked. You can't see it. If anybody wants the link, let me know and I can send it to you. And then that way you can watch it. I don't know how long it is. I think it's like 7 minutes. Okay. All right. Moving on. Part 2, World War I and its aftermath, and then the intensified debates about our role in the world afterward. Okay. Obviously, first part, we were initially neutral in World War I. We were supposed to be, right? Now, once we entered, this changed our tradition of non-involvement in European affairs. Okay. Once again, Washington's farewell address, right? We're not supposed to stick our nose in Europe's affairs, and likewise, Europe's not supposed to stick their nose in our affairs. Plain and simple. Okay. Woodrow Wilson calls for humanitarian and democratic principles. Why? We want to make the world safe for democracy, right? Because if the world is democratic, it's going to be pro-America because America is democratic. Okay. He promotes and presents these 14 points. Okay. These 14 points, one of them was the creation of a League of Nations to prevent violence from occurring. Obviously, Congress was not for that, and they couldn't enter into a League of Nations without congressional approval, right? Because they were afraid that if you enter into this League of Nations and we agree to defend or prevent wars, does that mean the president is going to utilize the League of Nations to send our military forces places and Congress doesn't have a say anymore? It was a big debate. Obviously, Congress wins. We don't join the League of Nations, which eventually led to its demise. Part B, the role of American expeditionary forces, the military. U.S. entered the war in 1917. We tipped the balance in favor of the Allies. Yeah, there it is, staying out of entangling alliances. Okay. There he is, safer democracy. Okay. Part 2, Senate refused to ratify the Treaty of Versailles or join the League of Nations. So here's the deal. Woodrow Wilson, he was a big part of post-war negotiations. He literally the Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations was his baby. I mean, these were both. The Treaty of Versailles was based on a lot of his 14 points. So now the point of this was end World War I. Now, the one thing that Wilson disagreed with was the punishment of Germany, like not punishing them, but the severity of their punishment. This is one thing that really goes unnoticed with regards to Wilson. He said that a crippled Germany can help no one, which he basically was saying that if you take Germany out, right, if you make these people, if you punish them so severely, they will long to hate you, and you will never stop. They will never stop fighting because they're angry. Now the League of Nations itself, this was a major component of the 14 points. This was an international organization whose sole intent was to prevent wars from occurring. Okay. Henry Cabot Lodge and the people known as the irreconcilables in Congress, they believed that Congress would lose its war-making power if the U.S. joined the League. Obviously, this is Washington's ghost rearing his ugly head saying, we don't get involved. We don't entangle ourselves in European affairs. Okay. That's what these people base their ideas on anyway. Okay. Yeah. Now this is the gap in the bridge. What's the gap in the bridge? Obviously, what's missing? Belgium, France, England, Italy. We're missing. There's our boy. It's his fault. Okay. U.S. foreign policy during World War I. It was a unilateral policy. It used international investment. Now, why is this important? In America, it was important for America because it continued dollar diplomacy. What does that mean? U.S. banks were investing in foreign countries. This is big. Countries are less likely to fight you or go to war if you say, hey, don't do that, or I'm going to call in your loans and you're going to owe us all this money. Because if you deal or mess with a country's economy, that's where you hit them the most. You hit them in the pocketbook. Okay. Peace treaties, obviously, Washington Naval Conference, 5-power, 9-power treaties. This determined the number of battleships the United States, Britain, Japan could build. It was a 5 to 5 to 3 ratio. Okay. Why is this important? Okay. This limits military power. Right? You want to try to not have, somebody dominating the military scene. Okay. Selective military intervention, mostly for the United States, was Latin America, Nicaragua, 1912, 1933. Maintained isolationism, the Neutrality Acts of 1930s. They basically said that we could not trade with any warring nations, any nations that were being what was deemed as belligerent. Okay, so anybody that was getting on a line, we had to stop trade with them, which at the time we were a major global trading power. So a lot of people traded with us. A lot of Americans opposed military action until Pearl Harbor. Once Pearl Harbor hit, that was the floodgate that opened that said, all right, let's go. Let's dance. Okay. That was the sneak attack that will always be remembered as December 7th. Okay. Now, the America First Committee, this was always against U.S. intervention in foreign affairs, led by Charles Lindbergh and Robert Taft. Okay. Yeah, that's a bad picture, but that's Charles Lindbergh. Okay, the pilot. Okay, moving on. Participation in World War II transformed our society. How did Americans view World War II? It was a fight for freedom and a fight for democracy in the world. Freedom. America. Okay. Now, it was later reinforced by the Japanese wartime atrocities like the Bataan Death March. Oh, is that linked? Oh, that's not linked either. Oh man, I'm sucking it up tonight. This is just bad. I had a link in here. Yeah, don't worry about that. It basically was it was a video of the Bataan Death March. I don't know if I can. It's not working. Whatever. I can't get the link to work. Anyway, the Nazi concentration camps and the Holocaust, that was the reinforcement that Americans were on the side of the good because of these two things, these barbaric, horrific events that occurred. Okay. Mass mobilization of American society. This helped to end the Great Depression. Now, the New Deal programs helped to alleviate the issues of the Great Depression, but it was the mass mobilization of our society into the war movement that basically ended the Great Depression. Right, put even more people back to work. Okay, it created an industrial base that helped win the war. How did it do that? It provided equipment, provisions, and troops for the war effort. So much, in fact, it extremely produced what FDR ghastly overprojected they would produce. Oh man, I can't remember the number. It was something about the shipyards would create. We would be so motivated. The shipyards would create a ship a month, and they turned out. I believe it was 2 ships a week. So it was this mass mobilization of the American public into the workforce towards this war effort that really ended the Great Depression. Okay. There's the Death March. Oh, that's a plane being repaired. Okay, moving on. Opportunities for women and minorities because of mobilization. Obviously, Rosie the Riveter. Women working in factories and specifically healthcare during the war, nurses mostly. African Americans serving in the military in segregated units, but they were serving. Okay. They were also working in factories at this time. Okay. Now, the debates over racial segregation, Philip Randolph helped to lead to Executive Order 8802, which eliminated discrimination in defense industry jobs. Okay. So it basically was the push for the elimination of segregation in the war effort jobs, okay, in the factories. The Double V campaign, this was the victory over fascism abroad and the victory over racism at home. And then obviously the military remained segregated until the Korean War with the passage of, or the signing of Executive Order 9981. Okay. Challenges to civil liberties, obviously Japanese internment. This was the forced movement of Japanese Americans who were 2/3 Nisei or greater to camps during the war. This was upheld by Korematsu versus the United States. Korematsu actually went and he refused to be relocated to an internment camp. He actually even went and had plastic surgery, which was insane and unheard of at the time, to alleviate his I always want to say epileptic folds, but it's Asians have an elliptical fold by their eyes, and he actually went and had the surgery to eliminate that fold to make him look more or less Japanese. So, which, like I said, was unheard of at the time, but he had it done. Okay, there's Rosie right there getting it done. Okay, and that is Philip Randolph. Okay, and that was an internment camp. All right. Reasons for the victory, obviously Allied cooperation, U.S., Great Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. The Tehran Conference, the Big Three meeting, agreed to the invasion of Europe in 1944. The technical and scientific advances, the Manhattan Project, this was a $2 billion project to develop the atomic bomb. And it basically used the atomic bomb to end the war. But because of its use, it later would spark debates, and even prior to its use was highly discouraged by a pretty smart guy. I think you might know him. His name's Einstein. Yeah, he said it's bad. It's not a power that should be recklessly. I'm trying to get the quote from his note to the president. To be recklessly toyed with, I believe was the term he used. Sonar, the invention of sonar. This was so important in the war against the German submarines, because the German submarines were top of the line. All right, sinking ship after ship after ship until we got to use sonar against these submarines and then basically sink them. Okay, servicemen and women, millions of Americans fought in the war. Campaigns such as the island hopping campaign in the Pacific. It was basically the plan to not just simply invade Japan, but to gain strategic islands closer to Japan. So military and specifically flight campaigns and bombing campaigns could be launched on the mainland Japan. All right, conquering islands in the Pacific prior to attacking Japan. And then eventually, we're talking about D-Day invasion in Europe. June 6th, 1944, Operation Overlord. This was led by Dwight D. Eisenhower. You had paratroopers jumping the night before, landing in Normandy and securing strongholds on the overnight before the landings actually started. They had to secure specific positions in Normandy prior to the landings. Okay. I believe that's Oppenheimer. I can't tell. I can't zoom in. Pretty sure that's Oppenheimer. And there's Dwight D. Eisenhower. Okay. The U.S. emerges as the most powerful nation on earth due to a couple things. One, Asia and Europe are devastated by the war. Okay. They have to rebuild, right? We don't have to rebuild. The war did not occur in America. Okay. Now, we played a very prominent role in the Allied victory and specifically the post-war peace settlements. So obviously, we're going to be a powerful nation. Okay. We helped to create the United Nations. Obviously, this is one thing where we learned our lesson from World War I and said, you know what, we need to do this. Okay. U.S. Becomes a permanent member of the Security Council, which is the Security Council is the council of the United Nations that determines whether the nations of the world will take peacekeeping action. Okay, it's not war or military, but peacekeeping. Okay, remember that, peacekeeping. This is a departure from Washington's farewell address. This is where we say thanks, GW, but we need to take a more prominent role in international affairs. Yeah, this is the moment. He's gone for good. But hey, I mean, it took him a while. So I know. He's finally gone, man. It was like he was around in Yes, he was around in Apush for a long time. Okay. Some test tips, obviously multiple choice short answer. You need to be able to make arguments for and against our expansion overseas. You have to be able to understand and identify the Treaty of Versailles and the 14 points. The reasons for victories in World War I and World War II. The domestic impact of World War II. You can do it on minorities. You can do it on the economy, so on and so forth. Okay. Essay questions about this concept. One, comparing and contrasting America's role in the world post-World War I and post-World War II. I say this specifically for probably like the long essay question. I would not be shocked to see something like this in the long essay question. Okay, the social impacts of World War II on Japanese Americans, women, African Americans. Once again, I think this would be, I don't know if this would be a long essay, but don't be shocked if it is. I think this would be more of a short answer question, the social impacts of World War II on specific groups. So for period 7, so I bring it back. Oops, whoa. Jesus, that's 5 pages filled now. I didn't think it'd be that much. Oh, wow, you're taking notes? Man, it's killing it. Could you do an LEQ or DBQ right now to show us how to do one? Okay, first of all, there's no way I can do a DBQ right now. Like I can break down a DBQ for you. Oh, was I like gone? I didn't know I was gone. I'm sorry. I can't like actually write a DBQ. Like I could go over one. Okay, hold on. I don't know if I can. Let me see if I can actually pull up. Wait. Okay, let me get this straight. So you guys couldn't see the presentation? Oh, come on. Could you see me? Oh, God, this sucks. Okay, let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do about a DBQ. Let me see if I can do one on. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to see if I can pull up an actual DBQ. Let's see. Yeah, this one. Oh, I'm trying to find one that I can actually show you guys where. I can actually like. Okay, I'm going to share something with you guys. I'm going to email it to you because I don't think I can actually show it to you. Are you kidding me right now? Oh, maybe I can. Hold on. I might be able to. Okay. Who's all in here? Oh, hold on. Let me get a light on. I'm going to share with you a sample essays and this, like the rubric and the score that they got. So I need to know who's all here. I don't know. Raith Shurnivas or Rosie P. Don't any of you have a name, like an actual name? Do none of you have your name in YouTube? Let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can put it in the chat and you guys can actually, like the link, and you guys can just click on it on the chat. That is my name, Raith Shruznivas. You should be able to click it. Let me see. These are 2025. I don't think they're the 2025. I don't think so. No, it's 2019. 2019. So, okay. I want to make sure that everyone's here. Hold on. All right. So here's the deal. I'm obviously not going to write one, but I have samples of ones and the scores that they received. So there are the first one, A. Okay, hold on. Okay, so A goes from. Okay, oh, I don't know. Let me see if I can share it. I don't want to lose you again. I'm gonna try sharing this. Okay. So can you see this? And can you see me? Okay, you can see me. This is from the 2019 DBQ. Okay. Now, so this first response, this is a 7 out of 7 response. Okay. And it's broken down. Hold on. I don't know if he can. So shoot, I don't have the prompt. I don't have the prompt, but I have the documents. Shoot. Okay. So hopefully you can still see this. Okay. So I think I did this right. I did. Okay. So this first response, I have it broken down by requirement. Okay. So obviously it got a 7, right? Which is an exemplary response. Okay. Here are the documents. All right. So in this sample response, obviously the contextualization is industrialization, new immigrants, progressive goals. Okay. Now, this is a period 7 DBQ. Okay. Now, we're talking about regulation of business. We're talking about political reform. We're talking about moral improvement. And we're talking about scientific principles. Notice you have documents that are being utilized for each category. All right. Now, Nate, you asked if you could, where are you? You asked if you could use Funny Farm, right? Or Animal Farm for an outside source. If you look here, you see the OEs. Okay. The OEs identify outside evidence. And that's okay. You can utilize outside evidence. All right. Hold on. I just lost something here. Okay. So I got to keep going back. If you want to know what a 7 out of 7 essay looks like, it looks like this. Okay. You have contextualization, right? You have your thesis. Now notice this is all in the first paragraph. It's in the introduction. Okay. Scroll down further. Okay. You start with a topic sentence, right? This topic sentence is going to show the reader that this paragraph is going to address whatever you're going to address. Okay. Obviously, this is going to address the progressives' attempts to regulate big business. Okay. So if you go back up here, right? Regulation of business, first paragraph. See that? Document 2, Roosevelt, context, meat inspection, FDA, Clayton Antitrust Act, right? So if you look here, the Food and Drug Act, right? Meat Inspection Act. Okay. Now these are, if you go back up here, these are going to be the context, right? So you're showing the reader, hey, this is what was going on during this time, right? The government is starting to get involved in people's food and drugs, right? To make sure that they're safe for consumption. Okay. Lifesaver Brew? Who's Lifesaver Brew? Okay. Oh, I'm assuming you're talking about me. All right. Hold on. So that's going to be, this is your introduction. In your introduction, you include your contextualization, your thesis. Your first paragraph is going to be, well, obviously this paragraph is going to be about the regulation of business. The second paragraph is going to give us political reform, right? Because this is about this time period, right? Obviously, I can't remember what the prompt was, but so the topic sentence is going to make it clear that the paragraph is going to address the attempts to reform government, right? Progressives' attempts to reform government, all right? And then it includes document 1. Now, notice it doesn't say according to document 1, but it identifies document 1, right? How does it do that? Right here. Jane Addams, founder of the Hull House in Chicago, an organization that sought to help immigrants assimilate into American society, wrote about how most immigrants in the 1850s were beholden to political machines for their jobs. Doc 1. Okay. Now, if you go back up here to Doc 1, Jane Addams describes the political machines in the 1890s in a book published in 1910. Okay. See, you don't have to say, hey, in Doc 1, this is what happens. You say, hey, Jane Addams, attacked the political machine, and here's how she did it. Who are these guys? Okay, Nate, I don't know what you mean by who are these guys. You should never say Doc 1, Doc 2, Doc 3 says anything. Utilize the wait. Why am I typing this? Can you see me? If you can see me, utilize the information that the document is giving you to say, hey, and as I just explained with Jane Addams and the description of political machines, say Jane Addams was a big opponent of these political machines, and she fought against these tooth and nail, and she said so in her book in 1910. And then you say Doc 1, because that's where you get that information from. You don't have to say in Doc 1, Jane Addams says this. I mean, you can, but it's better if you just say, hey, Jane Addams wanted to reform America, and specifically she wanted to fight against political machines in cities, and she said so in this book, right? And then you just identify it. I got this information from Doc 1. You don't say I got this information from Doc 1, but you label it Doc 1 because that's your source. Does that make sense? So I shouldn't group them or source them all at once. I would not group them all at once. I mean, remember, you get 15 minutes to organize your response. Plan out your paragraphs based on what you want to talk about and how you want to create a thesis and then defend it. Okay? That's what I would do. All right? And the biggest thing is just relax. All right? You have an hour. You really don't realize how long an hour is. Once you organize your thoughts, you can stick to your plan. Paragraph 1, I'm talking about this. Paragraph 2, I'm talking about this. Paragraph 3, I'm talking about this. Right? And then identify for each paragraph what are the pieces of evidence that you're going to utilize. Okay? Because if you're looking at the rubric, right, and you have that example of the rubric today that I gave you that shows you what you need to get each point. Okay, it's fairly detailed. All right, but this part right here, I don't know if you can. If this part right here that I just highlighted, can you see the highlight? Okay, good. All right, this part that I highlighted right here, this is an outline for the writing of the DBQ. You can make one of these on your scratch paper. I strongly suggest when you get to the DBQ, this is what you do. Okay? Identify based on what the prompt is. First and foremost, you have to understand the prompt. Okay. If that means you have to read it 3 or 4 times, read it 3 or 4 times. You have to understand what the prompt is actually asking you. If you don't, your thesis is going to be wrong or highly skewed, right? You have to be specific when you're creating a thesis, and in order to do so, you have to understand the prompt. Okay. Now, like I said, this highlighted area right here, this is the area that it's basically like an outline, right? And I strongly suggest to all of you or anybody that's still watching this thing, I think there's 3 of you left, write out an outline. Create an outline, okay, before you write your DBQ. All right? Does that help? Okay. Is there any other questions about this thing I shared with you? Because you should be able to, if you want to, you can make a copy of this. And literally, if you wanted to, you could create, and this is going to be crazy. What's the X thing? You could literally create like a Google Doc like this. Wow, that's a good question. The question was, for my evidence beyond the document, should I explicitly say this evidence was outside the document? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so if you look right here for the first paragraph on the regulation of business, the outside evidence was the Clayton Antitrust Act. Okay, so if we scroll down, so the Clayton Antitrust Act right here. Okay, the Clayton Antitrust Act was passed, giving the government much more power to break trust. Excuse me, that it had under the much weaker Sherman Antitrust Act. You do not have to identify it as outside evidence. In fact, it looks and it makes your DBQ response much stronger if you don't. Does that make sense? Because you're proving to this reader that you know what you're talking about. Okay, good. All right. So you have access to this. I would seriously, if you want to, make a Google Doc, or I might actually even make. What I'll do is I'll make a copy of this and I'll print it, and I will have one of those for each of you, so you can use it to scratch out an outline for your DBQ. Does that sound good? Okay, I'll do that right now. I will also be, I'll have donuts in wherever you guys are going to be. Oh, I don't know if I can do this. Hold on. I might not be able to do this. New document. Paste. Okay. I'm just going to get rid of the okay. Print it like in person. No, I'm going to give you a blank outline. I'll print out a blank outline. That way you can write out your own outline because I don't know what the DBQ prompt is. So I don't know what it's going to be about. So I will just have like contextualization and then it will be blank, and you'll just fill it in based on the prompt. No, that is not against AP rules. I better set this up the right way now. Hold on. Ah, that's why. 5, 5, 5, 5. Okay. Okay, I'll do this on my own here. Okay, so before I get this, I think I live really far away. Let's see. You don't attend the school I teach at. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, this was a last minute get together. I had a baseball game and I wanted to. Oh, yes. You can print the document off. I would not have the information on the sample response. What I would do is I would oh man. Let me finish editing this document and then I'll share it in here. And if you can print that off and bring it with you, then when you know the DBQ prompt, you can fill it in based on the prompt that you get. Let me finish doing this. Yes, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I called Grandma, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Grandma's pissed now too.
Why?
She wants to kill Medkey as well.
Okay. Well, can you give me like 5 minutes?
Oh, sorry. Dude, it's 10 o'clock. They should be in bed.
I have people that don't even go to my school on my live.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll call you back in 5 minutes.
Okay, love you.
Love you too. Bye. Sorry about that. What the heck? Okay. I'm just trying to make this a copy of this, and then that way I can share it with you guys. Okay. I think I got it now. Okay. Okay. This way you can fill everything in on your own. Hopefully you're still with me. And then I'll just share. Oh. TVQ, whoops, TVQ outline. Okay. All right, hold on. I'm gonna. Okay. Yeah, you should be able to access it, or click on this, and you should be able to access it. This is basically, it's a blank template. When you get the DBQ, you can then fill in the outline with things you want to use for contextualization, and your groupings of how you want to defend your thesis based on whatever the prompt is on the DBQ tomorrow. So hopefully this helps. Do any of you have any questions? Those of you that are still with me? Because if not, obviously you heard my kid call, because apparently it's after 10 o'clock and, you know, I'm needed. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that. Rivis. Okay. I don't know where you're at. I'm just going to call you 42. But hopefully this does help you. The best advice I can give anybody that's going to take the AP test tomorrow is just breathe. Okay. You've put the time in already to take this test, and just do your best, right? Go attack it, do damage, however you want to do this, and the best of luck to each and every one of you. Okay. If you are one of my students and you're still watching this, I'm bringing donuts, and I should have the DBQ outlines printed off for you guys, and I should have them I believe you guys are taking it in the restoration room tomorrow. So unless there's anything else, I'm going to sign off, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Do some last minute cramming if you have to, but also get some good sleep and do your best. Okay. All right. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Oops. Okay. I got this now. Have a good night. Yay, Heimler. Heimler can never steer you wrong. All right. Have a good night.